It started with a phone call that didn't sound like my son. His voice was tight, rushed, unfamiliar, like a stranger using Alex's tone. "Mom," he said, Did you take money from my savings?" For a second, I thought I misheard him. I was standing at the kitchen counter, sorting mail, my hands suddenly frozen above the envelopes. "What did you just say?" He sighed. "Look, I'm not accusing you, Claire checked the account this morning. There's over $3,000 missing. The transfer went to your name." My name. I laughed, but it came out sharp, wrong. "That's impossible, Alex. I haven't touched your account." "I know," he said quickly. "I want to believe that. But the bank said the transfer was done online with your email linked." I stood there, heart pounding in my ears. My email, my name, my son's money. "Alex," I said slowly, "someone must have used my information. I'd never take a cent from you. You know that." There was a pause. Too long, too heavy. "Claire thinks maybe you just needed it for something important. She said it's okay if you tell us the truth." The truth. That word hurt more than the accusation. "I don't need your money," I whispered. When the call ended, I stood alone in my quiet kitchen, the refrigerator humming like background noise in someone else's life. I stared at my reflection in the window. A 60-year-old woman, steady hands shaking. By the time I sat down, my phone buzzed again. A text from Claire. "It's fine, Mary. We just wish you'd told us. Honesty would have been easier than all this confusion." I didn't reply, because deep down, I knew this wasn't confusion. This was a setup, and if Claire was involved, I had to find out how deep it went. I barely slept that night. Every creak in the house felt louder, every passing car outside sharper. I kept replaying Alex's voice in my head, that careful tone, like he was trying not to sound disappointed in me. The next morning I went straight to the bank. The teller was polite, young and efficient. "Let's check your profile, Mrs. Harris," she said, typing quickly. "You said a transfer was made from your son's account into yours." I nodded. "That's what I was told." She looked at the screen for a few seconds before frowning. "I do see a transfer of $3,200 deposited into your checking account last week. Online transfer. But it came from an account labeled Family Savings, Joint Access." "Joint access," I repeated. "Yes, ma'am," she said. "2 authorized users, Alexander Harris and Claire Harris." My stomach twisted. "So Claire had access to that account too?" She nodded. "Yes, both names listed." I thanked her, walked calmly out of the bank, and sat in my car. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. Claire had access. She could have made that transfer any time she wanted. But instead of admitting it, she'd let Alex believe I did it. And worse, she'd done it using my name. That night I called Alex. "Honey," I said as evenly as I could, "you said the transfer went to my email, right? Can you forward me the confirmation?" He hesitated. "Claire already printed it out. She said she'd handle it." "Of course she did." I forced a smile into my voice. "Could you just send me a copy? I'd like to see it for myself." There was silence, then a reluctant sigh. "Okay, Mom, I'll send it." When the email arrived, I opened it immediately. The sender was listed as securiharrisbank.com, and sure enough, it showed my name, Mary Harris, as the recipient. But one detail caught my eye. The confirmation was time-stamped at 2:37 p.m. last Thursday. At 2:37 p.m. last Thursday, I was at my book club across town, surrounded by 6 other women who could vouch for me. I leaned back in my chair, the realization sharp and bitter. Claire wasn't just lying, she was framing me. I picked up the phone and called the one person who might help me get to the truth, my old friend Susan, who worked in IT security. "Mary," she said, after I explained everything, "if Claire used your name or email, I can probably trace where that transfer actually came from." I felt my pulse quicken. "Can you really do that?" "I can try," she said. "But if I find what I think I will, you need to be careful. Someone like that doesn't stop once they've started lying." As I hung up, I looked out the window at the fading evening light. Careful. Yes, I'd be careful. But I'd also be ready. Because if Claire wanted a game, she'd just picked the wrong opponent. 2 days later, Susan called. I was in the garden pulling weeds when my phone buzzed, and the tone in her voice made me drop the trowel. "Mary," she said, "I traced the IP address from that transfer. It didn't come from your computer." I straightened slowly. "Then whose did it come from?" "It's registered to a device at your son's address. Same network where Claire's phone logs in. The transfer was made from an iPad linked to her email, not yours." I felt my breath catch. "Are you sure?" 100%, she said. "I double-checked. She used your full name and created a secondary email that looks almost identical to yours, just a single letter off. That's how the bank didn't flag it immediately." For a long moment I couldn't speak. The birds in the trees above me kept chirping, completely unaware that my world had tilted. Claire had forged me. She'd taken the money, framed me for it, and nearly destroyed my relationship with my son. When I finally found my voice, I said, "Can you print that information for me, Susan? Everything you found?" "Already did," she said. "It's on your porch in a sealed envelope." That evening, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the papers, the email headers, the IP logs, the time-stamped login records. Proof. Hard, undeniable proof. I knew I could call Alex right then and throw it all in his face, but something in me wanted to do this right. Not out of rage, out of strength. I wanted him to see the truth, not just hear it. So I invited them both for dinner. Claire sounded wary on the phone. "Dinner?" she asked. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I said smoothly. "I just want to clear the air." When they arrived, I greeted them warmly. Roast chicken in the oven, wine glasses on the table, candles flickering. I could almost feel Claire relax, mistaking the calm for surrender. Halfway through dinner, I looked at Alex. "I've been thinking about that missing money," I said. "It's been bothering me." Claire's fork froze mid-air. "I decided to do a little digging," I continued. "Turns out the transfer didn't come from my account or my computer. It came from yours." Alex blinked. "Mine." "Your home network," I said softly, sliding the envelope across the table. "Specifically, Claire's tablet." Claire's smile faltered, but she recovered fast. "Mary, that's ridiculous. You must have gotten some fake report online." I looked her straight in the eye. "I didn't. It came from a certified IT investigator. There's your name, your email, your device ID, all of it. And your little trick with the fake address. Clever, but not clever enough." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. Alex's expression shifted. Confusion first, then realization, then something that looked a lot like betrayal. "Claire," he said quietly, "tell me she's wrong." She opened her mouth, but no words came. "Tell me," he repeated. Her lips trembled. I was going to put it back. Alex, we needed the money for the car repair, and I didn't think your mom would notice." I stood, my voice calm but firm. "You didn't think I'd notice being called a thief?" Tears welled in her eyes, perfectly on cue. I panicked. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Alex pushed his chair back, disgust written all over his face. "You let me accuse my mother." She reached for him, but he stepped away. That's when I realized I didn't even need to raise my voice. The truth was loud enough. The drive home for them must have been silent, but my house stayed loud in my head for hours after they left. Every word, every breath from that dinner played back like a scene I couldn't shut off. Alex had sat at the table long after she'd started crying, his face caught between anger and disbelief. "You forged her name, Claire," he'd said, his voice low but solid. "You dragged my mother into this." And she just kept repeating, I was going to fix it, as if that could erase what she'd done. When the door closed behind them, I finally let the tears come. Not from sadness, from exhaustion. The next morning, Alex came back alone. No car in the driveway but his. He looked like he hadn't slept. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a check. "It's the full amount," he said quietly. "She transferred it back last night. I made sure." I stared at it. "That was never about the money." "I know," he said. "It's about trust." He rubbed a hand over his eyes. "I keep replaying that phone call, Mom. The way I sounded when I asked you if you'd done it, you didn't even get mad. You just sounded hurt." "I was," I admitted. But you're my son. I was more afraid than angry. He nodded slowly. Claire's staying at her sister's. She needs to figure out what's next. We sat there in silence for a while, the morning light spilling across the kitchen table, the same table where I'd been accused, then vindicated. It felt like a scar, healed but not invisible. Before he left, Alex looked around the kitchen as if memorizing it. You always said truth has a way of finding daylight. I smiled faintly. It usually does, if you let it. That week, word reached me through friends that Claire was telling people it had all been a misunderstanding. I didn't correct her. I didn't need to. The truth already lived in the only place it mattered, my son's eyes. When I saw Emma the next weekend, she ran into my arms, giggling, sticky from ice cream. Grandma, she squealed. Daddy says you're his favorite person again. I laughed, holding her close, breathing in the scent of sugar and sunshine. Well, I whispered, that's a good thing, isn't it? That night, as the house went quiet, I looked at the framed photo on the mantel. Alex as a boy, missing front teeth, holding my hand. I'd spent weeks being made to feel small, powerless, but the truth had done what it always does. It came home, and this time, it brought my son back with it. A month passed before I saw Claire again. It was at Emma's birthday party, a backyard gathering with balloons, cake, and the kind of laughter that felt slightly too loud, as if everyone was pretending nothing had ever happened. When I arrived, Claire was by the grill, helping Alex with the food. She looked smaller somehow, shoulders slumped, eyes avoiding mine. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot, not the polished woman I'd always known. Mom, Alex said warmly when he saw me. He came over, hugging me tight. I'm glad you came. I wouldn't miss it, I said, handing Emma her gift, a sparkly art kit that made her squeal with delight. Claire eventually came over, wiping her hands on a towel. Mary, she said softly, thank you for coming. It means a lot. I studied her for a second. She was nervous, genuinely nervous. Of course, I said evenly. Emma deserves a happy day. We stood there awkwardly for a beat until Alex called for everyone to gather for cake. The moment passed, but not the tension. After the candles were blown out and the sugar-high chaos began, Claire approached me again, this time alone. Her voice trembled. I need to say something. I nodded for her to go on. I was wrong, she said quietly. Not just about the money, about everything. I was jealous of how close you are with Alex, of how he always listens to you. I thought if I could make him doubt you, he'd lean on me more. I took a slow breath, letting the confession sink in. And did that make you feel stronger? She shook her head, tears welling. It made me feel hollow. I've been seeing a therapist. I'm trying to understand why I do these things. For the first time, I saw something behind her eyes that looked like honesty, or maybe exhaustion. Either way, it wasn't the same calculating woman who had smiled through her lies weeks ago. I don't hate you, Claire, I said finally, but you need to understand, trust doesn't rebuild itself. You have to earn it, day by day. She nodded. I know. Before I could say more, Emma came running up, chocolate frosting smeared across her cheek. Grandma, take a picture with me? I smiled, bending down to her height. Claire lifted her phone, snapping the photo. Me, Emma, sunlight behind us. For just a moment, everything felt still. Later, when I got home, I looked at the photo she'd texted me. We were both smiling, genuinely freely. There was no trace of the bitterness that had haunted us for months. Maybe this was what forgiveness looked like. Not forgetting, not excusing, just choosing not to live inside the anger anymore. Still, deep down, I knew one truth would always remain. I could forgive her, but I'd never let my guard down again. Some people change. Others just learn to wear their masks better. Time would tell which kind she was. The weeks after the party passed quietly. For the first time in a long while, peace didn't feel like a fragile thing that could shatter at any moment. It just was. Alex called often now. Sometimes to talk about work. Sometimes just to ask how I was sleeping or if I'd tried the new cafe downtown. I could hear the relief in his voice. the calm that comes when the lies are finally gone. As for Claire, she kept her distance, respectful, but present. She'd drop Emma off sometimes, staying just long enough to chat politely about school or the weather. Each time she seemed a little humbler, a little more grounded. One afternoon, she came by alone. No Emma, no excuses. Just Claire, standing at my front door, hands clasped nervously. "May I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, then nodded. Of course. She sat at the kitchen table, the same table where she'd once let my son believe I was a thief. But today, she looked different. Not the manipulative confidence, just quiet remorse. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for not ruining me." I blinked. "What do you mean? You could have told everyone what I did. You could have destroyed my reputation. Instead, you just stopped fighting." I looked at her for a long moment. "That's not mercy, Claire. That's self-preservation. If I'd spent my days hating you, I'd have become someone I didn't recognize." She nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. "I understand. I'm trying to be better. For Alex. For Emma." There was a small silence between us. Not heavy this time, just honest. "I believe people can change," I said finally. "But I also believe in boundaries. You and I don't have to be close. We just have to be decent." She gave a small, genuine smile. "That's fair." Before she left, she paused by the doorway. "You're stronger than I ever realized," she said quietly. "Maybe that's why I was so threatened by you." After she was gone, I stood for a while, staring at the sunlight on the kitchen floor. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was closure. Later that week, Alex and Emma came for dinner. The house smelled of rosemary and roasted potatoes, the kind of scent that makes a home feel alive again. "Grandma!" Emma shouted, running into my arms. "Mommy says you're her hero." I laughed softly. "Oh, she did she?" Alex smiled from across the room, eyes warm. "She did, and she meant it." As we ate, laughter filled the air. Small, natural, real. I realized then that sometimes winning isn't about revenge or proving someone wrong. It's about keeping your dignity when someone else loses theirs. When the dishes were done and the house grew quiet again, I stood at the window watching the stars blink to life. The air outside was cool, the kind of night that made the world feel forgiving. I'd been accused, I'd been doubted, but in the end, truth had done what it always does. It came home, and this time, it stayed.